he promised to revive the information ministry and make it vibrant. 1 year on, has he made progress in fulfilling that promise? Is he one of the best performing ministers in the Akufo-Addo government, or we will see him face the axe in the ministerial reshuffle very soon? Dr. Mustapha Abdul Hamid, Minister for Information and spokesperson for President Akufo-Addo, is my guest tonight, and this is The Hard Truth. We are proudly brought to you by Murphy Homes and our Industrial City. My name is Nana Akusia Kunedwa Asante Samuels. You're watching The Hard Truth, and we are proudly brought to you by Murphy Homes and our Industrial City. Minister for Information, Dr. Mustapha Abdul Hamid, is my guest. Welcome to The Hard Truth.
Thank you.
You look well, and I like what you're wearing. Is it because you're a sheikh?
I guess so. I'm influenced somehow by the Arab culture.
But how is your role treating you, Minister for Information? How is it treating you?
Well, it's not a role that treats people kindly.
Yeah.
So it certainly isn't treating me kindly.
Oh.
But I also believe that I'm doing what I can within human possibilities.
I see, but it's been about a year since you were sworn in as a Minister of Information. Your ministry is supposed to empower the Ghanaian through information dissemination to ensure transparency and accountability in public policy and governance. How well, Hamid, are you performing your role?
Very well. For example, because of the proliferation of radio and television and even print news, right. Many people, or over the years, especially within the Fourth Republic, many people have tended to neglect, and I mean successive governments actually have tended to neglect the direct face-to-face contact between government officials and the citizenry. Ever since we came last year, we've instituted what we call the town hall meetings, where across the districts, we organize public fora where we get government officials to go and meet face-to-face with ordinary citizens, market women, artisans, chiefs, etc., etc. And then, first of all, tell them what accounts to them, basically, what government is doing, and then to take questions and feedback and so on. That helps us to shape government policy.
So apart from when these things come about, they tell you what they face and they tell you what they expect from government. So do you have, or have you seen some implementation policies being handled?
Oh, of course. For example, when we rolled out the free senior high school program, you would recall that there was some, if you want, consternation amongst the population regarding what people considered the hitches. So we had a mechanism, for example, that we put in place that was constantly giving us feedback from the ground every day. And then based on the feedback that we were getting as to what the hitches were, we kept refining and answering to those hitches until it all panned out very well. So there is always a crisis response mechanism that we activate at the earliest knowledge, and then we work on it. So we work on feedback. We don't just take feedback.
You work on it, but I see, but the Minister for Monitoring Evaluation, Dr. Anthony Osei, indicated on several occasions and platforms that the President has set some specific targets for all ministers and against which they will be assessed on. The President met with the ministers early this year, the part of the year. And how did your assessment go? I'm curious. Did it go well, and was he impressed with your performance?
Well, I wish you had asked the President or somebody
else
or the Chief of Staff, because it went well, but I didn't want to be the one saying it. But if somebody else had said it, then it would appear more authentic. But the truth of the matter is that we are basically human. And there are no perfect human beings.
Yes, but he talked about using some colors to indicate the performance of the minister. Yeah. So if the minister fails, it's a red. If he got some target right, it was a yellow. And if he got everything right, that was a blue. So did you get lots of blues?
No, the mechanism that the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation has put in place for doing his own evaluation. But quite frankly, the assessment that the President did of us was not from the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation.
So
actually, he himself was evaluated based on the President's
So
model.
let me put it this way. What targets did the President assess you on?
Well, he basically got feedback, from his security network, all his research. He has a research unit in the Flagstaff House. There's national security, there's BNI.
Right.
All of these people give him reports on what it is that his ministers and so on are doing. So basically, his assessment of us was based on all of these reports that he got. His evaluation of me was that we've introduced a lot of innovations in the ministry that hitherto had not been there. For example, if you go to...
he's happy with that?
Oh, absolutely. He was excited. He thought that, I've been very innovative, and that's good.
What exactly?
For example, we've never had a media monitoring center at the Ministry of Information, ever. So for the first time, when you come to the Ministry of Information, we have a modern, fully equipped media monitoring center that enables us monitor what is going on across the media landscape: television, television, print, and radio across the country.
What of internet?
And internet and all of that. So that by 12 noon on a daily basis, we have reports of what it is that is being said on what medium. Those that will need responses, then we respond. Those basically the sentiments of the people, etc., etc. So we have that. Number two, since 1957-58, when the Information Services Department was set up, the government had a mouthpiece, a magazine called Ghana Today. That Ghana Today magazine had been defunct for the past 10 years. Since we came into office, we've revived the Ghana Today magazine, and quarterly we are able to produce material on government programs, government achievements, and so on, which we disseminate across the districts, libraries, etc., etc. Since we came, the district information officers, every district has an information officer. District information officers had virtually become, if you want, redundant, because previous governments had always depended more on party communicators for disseminating government
You've done
information.
quite a lot. But again,
Yes.
sir, you implied during your vetting that the Information Service Department saw a decline under the NDC government, and you haven't done anything so significant so far to suggest that your administration will be any different, have you?
Right now, as we speak, we've equipped all district information officers with laptops.
143 of them.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. I'm sure you read it in the news. It was in 2005 that the Honorable Kwame Bartels, at that time, he was Minister for Information at that time, under the President Kufuor administration, bought information service vans for the Information Services Department. Ever since, those vans, many of them are basically rotting away, and etc., etc. Recently, we were able to buy some equipment, batteries, ties, etc., etc., to basically get many of them back on the road.
If you tell us you want to revamp or retool that department, that means you want to do more than the previous government. But Mahama Yarega also in 2013, if you recall yourself, did stay and bought some laptops, computers to the ISD. So surely you're not doing anything different, are you?
That's the point I'm coming. We're done with the laptop, Master. And then I was telling you about how we are getting the information services funds that were basically sitting on rocks and stones because there were no ties, batteries, etc., etc., so that people can begin to go back into the villages and communities. Because it's not every community in our country that is covered by FM frequency radio. And therefore, this would enable them to go back and disseminate government information. The number 3 point is that the Information Services Department actually also holds a lot of Ghana's historical treasure in terms of the films, if you want, the still pictures, etc., etc. Our film section which is at the industrial area, the film library has been closed down by the Environmental Protection Agency because the reels are rotting, there's a stench, and that place has become a health hazard. We've gotten one Professor Marcus Koister, who is an anthropologist, renowned archivist, and so on. We are working with him to, if you want, rescue a lot of this historical material because we need them.
I get that, but you mentioned yourself that Pamela Batelsin bought some, I think, 245 vans then. But you said you're going to just do 20. Is that the best you can do? 20 vans? Can't you do better, sir?
No, we said to them that we're going to do 20 this year. And
but he did that in, when was that? 2008 or something?
I'm coming. I'm saying that we said that we're going to do the 20 this year, which is just 2 per region. And then next year, our projection is that we will then be able to equip at least every district with 1 information service van. So it's something, it's a rollout program.
Why can't you do more? If someone did 245 in 2005, why can't you just do more? Why just 20, sir?
Well, remember that in 2005, the NPP had been in power. That was the second term that it was in office.
Yep.
We've just been in office 1 year now. Are you following me? So if somebody in 5 years did that, and I'm telling you that by next year, by which time...
We voted for you because we trust that you do better than whichever government.
Of course.
Exactly.
But the better will be that...
Is that an excuse enough to tell me you want to give us 20
I'm saying that the better is that next year will be 2 years in office.
Yes, sir.
And I'm saying that by the time we are 2 years in office, we would have equipped every district with an information. But that's better than 5 years previous.
Your ministry has oversight responsibility for, I think, 6 agencies: GBC, Information Service Department, Graphic Communications, so on and so forth. Many of these agencies, I would say, are not, very much equipped and need retooling to work effectively. Yet we saw a decline in the budget this year. 24% was slashed. That's about 140 million to 107 or 104 million Ghana cedis. Is that going to be, affect the work of the ministry? The slash of the budget, would that affect?
Of course, without a doubt. But you part of leadership is also the ingenuity with which you are able to work with whatever resources that are available to you. So without a doubt, it puts a lot of pressure, on the kinds of things that we would have done, if the slash hadn't happened. So yes, it will put, if you want, quite a lot of pressure.
Is it accounting for the 21? Is the slash accounting for the 21?
Without a doubt. Yes, without a doubt. In fact, I tell you, it had to take me a lot of negotiation outside even the budget to get the Minister for Finance to agree to this 20, to get some other facility to be able to finance this 20.
But hold on, what happens to the 248 vans? So that's when you said you're buying batteries and to fix them, right?
Exactly. Yes, the many of them that are, if you want, for want of a better term, revivable. These batteries and tires will be able to revive them and get them back on the streets. Those that are not revivable, when we get to the time...
How many are the revivable ones?
Right now, we have about 60 that are revivable.
Wow.
So the rest of them, at the appropriate time, we'll seek advice from the Ministry of Finance. I guess the best way would be to auction them and so on. But I don't want to jump the gun. And then perhaps if the government auctions them and gets some of the money, then it can do a top-up to buy new ones.
But as a spokesperson for the President, His Excellency, and the government, you are always put in a position where you might, have to make the bad look good. Looking at the nature of your work, can I say that honesty is a luxury for you?
I try to be as honest as possible. As you said, I try to be faithful to my religion,
I like that because as an Islamic scholar,
exactly.
In the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, am I right?
Baqarah,
right. So 2 verse 42 says that, you do not mix the truth with falsehood or, cancel the truth whilst you know it. So looking at that, is it difficult for you to come out and lie?
It is difficult.
Do you lie sometimes, sir?
It is difficult. I don't remember that I have lied. Because at the same time...
Do you polish the truth or do you polish the lie?
Maybe I nuance them. I'm not sure if they are the same, but you know, you ought sometimes. You see, sometimes when we say that you ought to nuance the truth, it is not exactly the case that you want to hide the truth. But there are times also, for example, even in religion, people like Immanuel Kant and Al-Ghazali and co have said, for example, that if you lie, for example, to save somebody's marriage, for example, it's acceptable. That, for example, if somebody's chasing somebody to kill them and then they sought refuge in your room and you said that, no, this fellow is not here, so as to save a life and so on. So all of these...
tell good lies
exactly,
sometimes.
So truth and lies are, if you want, relative. That's the philosophical point I'm making to you. That truth and lies are relative.
But
and so, but to lie as in conceal the truth from the Ghanaian people, that's not something that I would do at all. Because when you go to communication school, and I remember my PR lecturer in Legon, Alote Papu, said that a PR officer must never lie. Actually, it's a principle that they teach. So I don't know how in the real world it's become the case that PR officers are supposed to be lying. But when we go to the communications, they tell us that it's always better to be truthful. Because if you lie, whatever way it is, it will come back later on to haunt you.
But Abdul Hamid, let me ask you, have you ever in your bed, in your closet, thought that, I could have said or communicated this better to the Ghanaian populace, whatever it is? Have you ever told yourself, I should have done this better?
Yes, there's a gulf between what you say and what people hear. Okay? Actually, there's a book by one Dr. Frank Lantz that is titled Words That Work. It is not what you say. It has a subtitle that says, it is not what you say, but what people hear. Right. Sometimes you say something,
but they hear differently.
And then they hear differently. Because people process information based on their own subjectivities. As an Islamic scholar, I always say that there is no objective interpretation of text anywhere in the world. Every interpreter of a text comes to the text with his or her own subjectivities. So based on people's subjectivities and so on, that's how they process the information.
Right.
And so you may say one thing and people may hear differently. For example, I'll give you an example. The famous example of 2012, when our presidential candidate, now President Akufo-Addo, said to party supporters that stand by the ballot box, defend our democracy. NDC will come and frighten you to run away, so they staff the ballot boxes. Stand there even if they kill you, because all die, be die. You remember. Now, people didn't put it in the context. You see, after I've told you the full statement that he made. Now, people just cut out.
We remember all die, be die.
Exactly. Now, even though he said all die, be die as a defensive principle, people either heard it or deliberately heard it or deliberately wanted to hear it or deliberately twisted it to mean an aggressive principle. Meanwhile, he was talking about a defensive principle. So sometimes it's not exactly what you say that people want to hear. They hear what they want to hear.
I see, but many have, sir, described you as being an incompetent spokesperson who is fond of, peddling lies and exaggerating public policy, that you lack tact and fineness in dealing with issues. In fact, it is known by one gentleman, Moses Kofi Yahaya. He described you as, over the past 15 months, Mustapha Hamid has proved beyond reasonable doubt that he's an habitual fibbler and a fierce, unapologetic peddler of falsehood. Simply put, Mr. Hamid is an irritant. Is that how you see yourself, or is that true?
Well, I am not sure that you would name many people who have survived 11 years as spokespersons to one person. Okay?
Yep.
So, to be speaking for Akufo-Addo and have his confidence for 11 years, I've been doing this since 2007. I'm very satisfied. Otherwise, I'm sure he's intelligent enough to have said, you don't speak my mind, you don't represent my principles, and therefore I'll do away with you. The spokesperson job is perhaps, in my view, the most difficult job
when you hear some of these
government.
comments, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I feel good. I'm a politician, isn't it?
You feel good?
Yeah, I feel good, because it is only when you are doing something good that it excites debate. If you are doing things that don't excite debate, then it means you are not doing anything at all.
You don't care what they say about you?
I do, but I'm saying that it makes me feel that, oh, it means I'm doing something.
But incompetent isn't a good word, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's also relative. I've told you that the president who gave me this job has done an assessment of me and feels that I'm very innovative and I've done well, and he wants me to continue. And that's what I'm doing. Are you following me? There are many people also who say that, including people in the Information Services Department. And if you interview them, they will tell you, the original information officer, they say, this is the best information officer we have ever had. So there are other voices as well. So I'm very satisfied. In any case, in most cases, history vindicates you when you have left. Okay, the Dagomba people have a saying in Dagbani that what it means is that it's very difficult for humans to be called good. Humans are called good only when they have exited. Yeah, so it's fine.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Hard Truth, proudly brought to you by Murphy Homes, Tower Industrial City and Paul's Fitness Gym. Now, the president has told us to be citizens but not spectators. Well, a columnist, Josephine Nete, feels that Kweku Bako does a better job than in defending the president than you do, because he comes with facts and all of that. How would you feel if the president, appoints Kweku Bako over you?
That would be fine. That would be the president's prerogative. That would be fine.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Why? The president is free to appoint whoever he wants to appoint. And that's fine. That wouldn't bother me at all.
Do you think he will be a better information minister and spokesperson than you are?
I wouldn't know until he's there. He's not been where I have been. I am now. Because when you are Minister for Information, you don't just stay at home the whole day pulling papers here, doing research, going around offices, nosing for information. That's not what you do as Minister for Information. As you said, you are running GBC, you are running Ghana News Agency.
6 arms, huge ones.
Exactly. You have 10 regional offices, you have 180 district offices that you are running, you have a government communication machinery that you are superintending, and you have to also manage literally hundreds of, if you want, party communicators through whom sometimes you have to filter your information. It's not as easy as going to sit on news file on Saturday and then speak, and then you go and then you have the whole week to yourself, and then you come back another Saturday. You don't have that luxury if you are Minister for Information. I told you I had to leave a government retreat to be here. By the time,
for that,
exactly, and then from here I go back there, stay there perhaps the whole night, and go back there the whole of Sunday, and then go back in the morning. And in between that, whilst I'm trying to sleep, I have to research, I have to read. I'm reading from 36 other ministries. You have to be on top of every minister just has one brief, but you have 36 briefs. That's what you have when you are Minister for Information.
It's not an easy job.
Absolutely. So it's not as easy as people just sitting in their houses saying, Kweku Bako doesn't have to go to all the things that I go. He doesn't have to go to a cabinet meeting from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and etc. etc. Are you following me? Yeah. So really and truly, as they say in Ghana, you can't make a comparison like that. I was a lecturer. I have a PhD. And so that tells you that research is not a problem. You do research I'm widely published. I'm a senior lecturer, not just a lecturer. You go from assistant lecturer.
Abdul Hamid,
Oh, absolutely.
Mustapha.
Without a doubt.
Like
I'm
that.
very proud of what I've achieved in life.
We are grateful. We are proud of you too.
Without a doubt.
We are proud of you
Without a
too.
doubt.
But during your vetting, you promised to help sanitize the media airwaves. And you agree with me that sanitizing the airwaves include putting a halt to making some unsubstantiated, alleged, or allegations on air. It was recently, we recently saw, I think Mr. Kennedy Japan insulting the PRO of Ghana Armed Forces, Colonel Agrikwashi, for suggesting that Mr. Japan cannot buy his way to get protocol slot for party members. Yet we didn't hear you, condemn the comment. Why is that?
Condemn which comment?
He said, if I quote, he said, "You're a foolish colonel, and when you retire, you'll be a security guard, but you want to clean the airwaves." So these are not good comments, are they?
Well, am I supposed to be condemning what people say? I said that I want to lead by example. I want to be the lead in being decorous and etc., etc. For the Honorable Kennedy Japan, I mean, everybody knows he's a no-holds-barred person, as they say. He pulls no punches, as they say.
Right, but leadership by example,
so
meaning that if someone from your party comes out using some not so good, words on someone else, you can perhaps come and condemn and say you shouldn't have said that.
Well, I'm not sure whether I should be entering into fights and public spats with people. Perhaps it is more diplomatic to admonish them on their back, because you see, if somebody does something that is not correct in the open and you chastise them in the open, human instinct compels them to rebut in a like manner, and then before you realize, you are in a public spat with the Honorable Kennedy Japan, and that one also generates another.
Are you scared of him?
No, I'm not scared, but certainly it will be unbecoming of a Minister for Information to attract headlines that say Minister for Information in public banter with his Member of Parliament. That is not a headline that you want to see.
I see, but really it is no secret that you would have preferred perhaps a different appointment to your current one. Will you prefer a portfolio change in the ministerial reshuffle?
As I said, I am basically at the beck and call of the president. The answer that I gave in the early part of last year, which people interpreted to say that I didn't want this job, was that I said at that time that I had done this job for 10 years. Okay, the questioner asked me that, is this the portfolio you had always been looking for, that if MPP came to power, you wanted to be Minister for Information? I said, oh, for a job that I had done for 10 years, naturally, I would have wanted another challenge. Okay, because nobody wants a stagnated CV. Right. Everybody wants a graduated CV. That's the natural instinct. You want to build your CV. So 10 years on a job, if you get another challenge, then it helps you to balance your CV and get other perspectives of life. But otherwise, I'm enjoying its highs with its lows. It's a job that every day you are insulted.
But honestly, let's be frank. Wouldn't you prefer to have a new portfolio?
Whatever the president decides, I'll accede to it.
No, but personally, what do you think? You think a new portfolio will help?
Well, not that it will help. You see, I believe, and again, I'm sorry, there's a risk of sounding boastful. I believe that I speak well. Quite frankly, I have some command of the English language. I speak English fluently, okay? And so you are looking for...
What are you saying? So what?
Oh,
so
quite frankly.
If I'm an information minister and I can't speak well, would that make me a bad one?
Yeah, because the ministry...
Is that the basis for being a good information minister?
Oh, because you are the lead...
Yes,
but because that's what the word is. Spokesperson. In other words, you speak. And anything that must be done done well.
Speaking is shouldn't necessarily mean being fluent in English. It's speaking for me to understand. Communication comes with feedback. So there is someone talking and there is a feedback and an action, right?
Yeah.
So does it really matter in the control.
Oh, but it does. But it does. You have to have control of language, even to be able to use my word again, to be able to nuance your words and get them out more clearly and communicate more clearly. I speak Hausa. I speak Twi fluently. Indeed, many people, sir.
I see.
Me kabu benyina. No, I mean, tina akame muda.
I see.
What you say? Intino people say, and I speak Mampruli, I speak Dagbani, etc., etc. There is absolutely no doubt.
So let's say I'm appointed the Minister for Information. Yes. I don't speak any of that. I speak Twi, I speak English, I speak Fanti. Will you be a better minister than I am?
Well, in certain respects, if we were to go up north to communicate, you would be unable to communicate directly through the people except through an interpreter.
I see. But, you know, you justified the appointment of 110 ministers by President Akufo-Addo. What do you make of the performance of your fellow ministers so far?
I think that everybody has performed creditably, in my view. All of the 36 of us who sit around the cabinet table. I have the opportunity every two weeks. That's how we go. We attend cabinet every 2 weeks to hear them, the memos that they present, the kinds of things that they are doing for their ministries. And I am very satisfied that everybody is on top of their brief. And so I think that is justifiable. If you look at the kind of weight that the volume of work that we want to do, you would require those hands.
But really, do you think all 110 ministers will survive a reshuffle? And which minister do you think are unlikely to survive a reshuffle?
How do I qualify to make that judgment? I don't qualify.
Really?
Yes.
I see. But let's look at the president's address on the U.S.-Ghana Defense Agreement. Many were not, with the approach he took. They didn't like the approach he took. Many feel that he could have presented the case without, resorting to insult and using harsh words. Did the president let his emotions get a better part of him?
No. He said exactly what he intended to say. I mean, and everybody knows that the president is a passionate speaker. You know his record in the law courts. He speaks passionately, and so he spoke passionately. And as I keep saying also, communication is also contextual. It's not under every circumstance, okay? Communication is dictated by time and place and circumstance and so on. And so he was communicating under circumstances that required him to be passionate, and I guess that he showed his passion.
But using words like, surely the kind of cynical manipulation by reckless self-seekers, which is the fullness of time the people of Ghana will acknowledge and condemn. And he also said that we have exposed the unspeakable hypocrisy of the fraternity of some frontline politicians who make a habit of running the hares and hunting with the hounds. Right.
I love that expression, isn't it? Running with the hares and hunting with the hounds.
Right.
Yes. Why? Because these are characterizations. Okay, they are characterization. Oftentimes, we have the habit of calling a spade a big spoon. But sometimes it is important to call a spade a spade. And so, on this occasion, the president felt that it was important to call a spade and characterize people for who they are.
Couldn't he have made his point, but, ignore some of these words?
I doubt that he would have communicated effectively if he was wishy-washy about what he wanted to say. Because these are people who have signed same agreements, not once, not twice, but thrice. 1998, 2012, 2015, and know exactly what this entails. And they know exactly that it had nothing to do with the establishment of a military base. And yet go out in the public space to incite fear in people and so on. Because, of course, fear-mongering is a major political weapon across the world. Everybody knows that sometimes if you want to gain political power and so on, you have to incite fear in people, especially fear of the other party that you are against. And so they are doing this purely for political gain. So when he says that this is self-seeking political gain, that's what it is.
I see. I would want to talk about that. It's been addressed over and over again. So let's move on. You recently emphasized in a 30-point statement that the economy is, getting stronger. That's good to hear. But really, has it reflected positively on the standards of living of the average Ghanaian?
It has, and I'm sure to varying degrees. Okay, you would not be able to say that it has completely transformed people's lives, but I believe to a greater degree it has had influences on various sections of the population. And of course, when you go to PR school, they say that there is nothing like public, but there are publics, because the farming public has interests that are different from the marketing public, from the teaching fraternity, and etc. So these are all publics. And depending on the public that you operate in, it will have an effect on you, to a more or less degree than other publics. So for example, if you take the business community, the fact that the cedi has stabilized allows them to be able to import the same volume of goods that they were importing into the country for purposes of business last year. They are still doing the same. Hitherto, when the cedi was virtually fluctuating, people were not able within a certain period to buy the same volume of goods, and therefore to make projections on how much profit they were supposed to earn, and etc. etc. So it has definitely had an impact on the business community. Regarding the reduction in electricity tariffs, well, it just took effect 1st of April. So by the end of this month, I'm sure businesses are going to see that how much money they are paying for electricity is less than they were paying before.
But really,
and etc. etc.
Really, it's high. Yes. There's a cost of living is high in the country as we speak, and many Ghanaians complain that things are hard when you go to the market. Now, despite the stabilization of the Ghanaian economy, and as you put it, isn't still poverty still an issue?
Oh, poverty is quite an issue. It's quite an issue. We've been in power 1 year and 4 months, basically.
Does that matter? I mean, you say that a lot.
No, the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not possible in 1 year, 4 months to wipe poverty. The people that have transformed...
Okay.
I'm coming.
Will you wipe poverty after 4 years?
No, you won't. Not even after 8 years. The president has told you that per the programs that we have put in place for the transformation of our country, we should be able to do it in a generation, just like the Malaysians, the Singaporeans, and the South Koreans. According to Kofi Bentel, this is our envy list. He calls these countries Ghana's envy list because we are always mentioning them and say, look at them, we started with them, they are gone. They did it in a period of between 20 to 30 years. That's what a generation is defined as, a period of up to 30 years. So the president says if we begin to do these things that we have begun doing now, in a generation we can transform our country.
You know what? So what
I may not even be alive, but it doesn't matter.
How old are you now?
I'm 47.
In how many years?
Well, in June I'll be 47, so I'm 46.
So you'll be alive when? In how many years?
30 years. I may not be alive.
47, but you'll be alive.
If you had 30 years, that would be 77.
So you'll be very
I may
young
not
then.
be alive. You will be lucky. Anybody who is above 60 in our country is living on borrowed time. I'm sure you know what the life expectancy in our country is.
I see. But the United Nations Special Report on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, Professor Philip Alston, stated in February this year that Ghana finds itself, or you find itself in a crossroad to maintain levels of economic growth while addressing the poverty. High levels of inequality again threaten to undermine this growth as well. Isn't that the case?
High level of
inequality. It threatens to undermine the growth as well as the rights of the people or the poor.
Oh, there is. And that is why, for example, we are concentrating also on agriculture, because quite frankly, the mainstay of about 70% of our population is agriculture. And they are doing agriculture in such a way that it's basically subsistence farming. And so you want to be able to empower people to go beyond subsistence.
Right.
And so you are providing them with fertilizer, seedlings, and other farm imports at half price. And even the other half, you are not asking them to pay. That's the first time this is. You are not asking them to pay the other half in cash. People are free to take it, and then after the farming season, when they have harvested, to pay back to government, even with produce and not even with cash. That's a very innovative way of encouraging people to continue in agriculture. And because of that, many people who hitherto were not in agriculture, like my good self, are planning to become farmers.
To farming what? Going to which sector?
Well, I want to do cashew farming. I hear that's the new gold, if you want. And yeah, because first of all, it will help me to improve my personal economy. It will help me to add to the Ghana's export drive. You know, the economists tell us that it is only when we are exporting more and importing less that we'll be able to have proper balance of payments, and then also strengthen our economy and etc. So agriculture is quite an important, if you want, area of national life that we should strengthen going forward. And then we are doing that. So we believe that if that were to happen, and in the next 2 years or 3 years, when we have seen the full benefit of the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign, we'll be able to drastically reduce inequalities in our rural areas. Number 3, free SHS. The many families have had to basically scratch the F in order to get 1,000 cedis every term to go and pay for children's school fees. They don't have to go through that hustle anymore. And so that kind of money would also then perhaps be plowed into some other investment or put in some other areas of the family life and so on. So there are all of these programs that we believe that, to quote the president again, in the fullness of time, will help us to reduce inequalities.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Hard Truth, and we are proudly brought to you by Murphy Homes, Dawa Industrial City, and Paul's Fitness Gym. Mustapha Abdul Hamid, Minister for Information, is still here. So, in your 30-point list, it was interesting to note that you did not, include the fight against corruption in the list of things, you were so much thankful of. Perhaps is this because you don't think that, you have achieved much when it comes to corruption or the fight against corruption?
Well, to talk about corruption in those terms, because the things that I was talking about were finite things that had come to conclusion. So, for example, if I say that we targeted a budget deficit of 6.3 and we've done 7.9, that's finite. Okay. Now, is it possible in 1 year and 4 months to say that we have eradicated corruption, for example?
You could have said we are fighting, we have started. You have even started an example saying, so we did this.
Oh, but in that sense, I put it in there that we have appointed the special prosecutor.
That was it.
Yeah, but that is the beginning or part of the fight. I mean, prosecutions are going on now in our courts, and so on. So the fight is on. It's just
what do you think? Don't you think it's so slow, the fight against corruption?
I don't think that it is slow. Why? Because corrupt people are people who also apply diligence and finesse to their stealing methods. And therefore, you would have to also apply diligence and finesse to the process of basically catching them. And so the Attorney General and her people would have to comb through volumes and volumes of paper trail, and, taking somebody to jail, it's not a joke.
But why were we all expecting that it was going to be like that fast when you guys come?
Well, it's the same conversation we've been having the whole evening. Everybody sitting aside. I'm sure somebody sitting aside will say, oh, but Kunedu, is that how to interview people? Yeah. I would have done it better.
Yeah.
But you stand aside and let's give the fellow this mic and see. They would fumble. It is always the case that those who are standing aside and watching the process of the draft know how to play it better than the players who sit by the draft. It's the same thing. The reason why we have 25 million coaches in Ghana who always know how it is that the Black Stars should perform and all. It's like that. It's a universal principle that people who are not in the job think that it is an easy matter. There is no job that is an easy matter. So we all would sit aside and say, oh, people are corrupt, people have stolen this. It's like that. You know, there's something that I need to also say, quite frankly, that there's a certain ingrained belief, and I believe it is very deep in our Ghanaian society, that all politicians are corrupt, that they are thieves, and etc., etc. Are you following me? So when we label people like that, we also think that, oh, therefore it is easy. Mustapha Hamid, I saw him wearing a black shoe. Perhaps he stole money in order to buy it. Immediately we just go to the Ministry of Information and we'll see that, oh, he was supposed to use some money to buy a battery and he didn't buy it. He went and bought a black shoe. But it's not like that. You're not going to be able to catch people just like that. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to do this. But I believe that the president is determined to do it. Number two, the person that everybody says that Martin Amidu is basically like Kakai. You know.
Is he not?
And so even the appointment of Martin Amidu in itself is a solid fight, because then for those of us who are in it now, who intended to be corrupt, will now have to watch over our shoulders and be sure that Martin is not coming or something like that. So that in itself shows our sincerity and our commitment.
But seriously, let me just ask you a very silly question. So when you're in government, before you come into government, you have these very nice ideas of perhaps, let me use the ministry, what you want to do in the ministry. Now you get there and you're appointed and all of that. And there is a spirit, I don't know, is there a spirit that overshadows you and wants you to do bad things like stealing the people's money?
Well, I've had
so
this.
You have $104 million Ghana cedis.
Yes.
Yes. So do you have eyes for, say, the four? That's a no.
Well, I don't know about others, but let's be honest about some conversation also. In this our society, those who know me personally know that I don't care about materiality at all. I am not like that. As for me, I don't believe that money is what makes people happy and so on.
What does?
But
what makes people happy?
What makes people happy? What makes people happy is contentment. You know, the Buddha said that suffering is selfish craving. Okay? If somebody is wearing this white shoe and then you are sitting there and say, if I got this shoe, you are suffering already. So suffering is selfish craving for things so then that leads you to then do all the bad things that will help you to acquire. But we
share the same thing. I also believe that success is being content with what you have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get me? Now, but in this our society, let's be honest. If you are minister for 2 years, just 2, forget even 4 years, 2 years.
And you have houses or what?
And you don't. This, I'm not talking even if you have. If you don't, you finish. And then you come back, assuming you were renting a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. And then you go back, or like me, I go back to my UCC bungalow, the bungalow in which I was at UCC and everything. This same society.
They will insult you.
You know that. They will say, oh, look at him, useless man. Okay, minister
how much are you paid? You tell me, how much are you paid?
14,000. That one is public knowledge. Yeah.
I know, 14,000, but you can build a house, after.
Exactly, you can. Because how much? I tell people that when I was a senior lecturer, I was taking 4,200 cedis a month, and I was fine.
Take home or gross?
Take home. Right. Take home.
Net.
Yes, net. That's what I take home at the end of every month. I was fine. On that 4,200, I could go to Barclays Bank and borrow up to 70,000. Okay. Now that I'm taking 14,000, it means if I go to Barclays Bank, and I'm using Barclays Bank because that's where my salary goes through, I will be able to borrow perhaps $1 million or whatever it is, or 100,000 or 200,000 cedis. And with 200,000 cedis, I can begin to raise a house. But immediately you begin raising a house now. They'll say that, we're sika, I don't know. Meanwhile, I was taking 4,200 and I was able to buy a plot of land and so on. So if now I'm taking 14, let's even assume that I'm spending 10,000 every month. I will still have 4,000 with which I can invest in my housing project at the end of every month. So really, it's not the case that whatever a minister does, then he has stolen the money. The minister's salary should be able to help him build a house.
But let's talk about the Right to Information Bill. It was laid in Parliament on March 23rd, and you have assured Ghanaians that the bill will be passed, into law by the end of 2018. That wasn't, the case. But, considering the fact that your government failed to uphold several timelines in the past year in relation to the same bill, can we trust your timelines now?
You have reason to be skeptical, especially so because it's been in the works for 17 years, actually. We've been struggling, Ghana has been struggling to pass a right to information law for the past 17 years. And so you have a right to be skeptical, generally, about governments who say they would pass it. But the reason why this time I'm calling on you not to be skeptical is because this time the thing is in Parliament. And whether or not we like it, when Parliament resumes, they will debate it. So now we are almost there.
2018, I mean, we should have
yes,
a bill
that's
passed.
why, yes, I was even being, if you want, charitable and liberal. So definitely by the end of 2018, we'll be there.
Soon.
It could be sooner than that, but I didn't want to use the sooner date so that, again, people are at my neck.
I know that, but you also slated that last year, that by the end of 2017, the RTI will be passed into law, and those were your exact words. You said when I said that by the end of 2017, I wasn't joking. So you really meant it, but this obviously didn't happen. So
yes,
with this kind of record again, why should we trust your words now?
Well, but that's the point I'm making. What happened was that there are three major bills that I said I was determined to pass in 3 years. That is, if I survive 3 years in the Ministry of Information. I said the first year, which is 2017, I'll try and do the Right to Information law. The second year, I will do what we call the advertising law. That's the law that regulates advertising in our country. It's quite untidy. And then the third year, perhaps do the broadcasting law. These are three critical laws that I believe if we pass, they would help to sanitize the environment and everything. So I slated the RTI for last year. Indeed, last year we started the processes, we did the consultation, we took it to Attorney General finished with it, did her consultations, etc., did her own changes, etc., etc. We took suggestions from stakeholders, and then we took it to Cabinet. Unfortunately, because in the first year we had so much volume of work to do, it stayed in the Cabinet Secretariat for a very long time, unable to come to the Cabinet Committee level and then to Cabinet. And so it was there. We managed to push it together with the Attorney General. And I'm acknowledging her quite frankly because it is one of the laws that she's very passionate about. So we managed to push it to the Cabinet. So I, quite frankly, if we were to follow strictly my promise, I had done my bit.
Let's say Parliament delays in passing the bill, it's pushed to 2019. What would you do?
I doubt that it will happen. It won't happen.
It won't happen.
It won't happen. This time, I basically can go to sleep on that law.
So if it doesn't, will you resign?
It won't happen. There is no ifs. There are no ifs. There are no buts. It's going to happen. What's going to happen to prevent the Parliament from debating it? It's in the bottom. There's nothing. There's nothing that, unless of course all the members of the Communication Committee of Parliament died. But even if all of them died, there will be by-elections that will replace them, and then another badge will come and do it.
I'm curious. What will make you wake up one morning and say, "I'm resigning from my job"? What would that be?
What will that be? If the president asked me to do or say something that was against my conscience.
Like what?
I don't know what yet because it hasn't happened. I'm just saying, for example, if it was to say things that I believe will shake, for example, the foundation of my belief. Because I'm not one of those who think that because we're engaged in politics, you can just do anything and get away with it. Unfortunately or fortunately, I believe that every action of a politician will be accounted for on the day of judgment. You cannot be entrusted with the resources that Allah has given to all of us as people to utilize. And you just a few of you are entrusted with those resources and will not have to account for it. Even if you don't account for it before the people, you will account for it before the Almighty Allah who gave us those resources. So, if the president was to ask me to do things that I believe I will be unable to account for before Almighty Allah, because right now I could fall dead. I could die this minute. Allah does that. Allah does what he wants. And so I would resign because I would place my accountability to God above my accountability to government or to party or to president or whatever.
Finally, people say, before this interview, we had to do a survey of people asking them what they thought of you. Most of them felt that you are proud and it is difficult to approach. I dare to differ. I just can't relate to that. But what would you tell the millions of people who think that this guy is too known and he's proud and we can't even approach him? He's the Minister for Information and he should be accessible to us. What would you tell them?
That they don't know me. Because if you come to my ministry, I believe that it is one of the busiest places. One of the busiest places. If you come to my ministry, there is always a long queue and I make time to see as many people as I can. Okay? I'm very friendly, I'm very open. However, the truth of the matter is that, you know, again, at the risk of sounding boastful, people who are quiet, and I mean quiet, I'm tampering, quite intelligent, quiet, and
Mustapha Hamid,
and confident.
I see.
Yeah, people who are confident always risk being labeled as, if you want, inaccessible or arrogant or whatever. But I'm not like that. You cannot be a faithful Muslim and be arrogant. The Quran says, do not walk pompously on the surface of the earth because you cannot rival the mountains in stature. I am very, very conscious of that admonishment. And from where I have come, I have sold soap put on my head on the streets of Tamale. Okay, so I have come from very humble beginnings. My father was a soldier who didn't even go to school. My mother was a Set A teacher. I grew up in a one-room apartment in Tamale all through my life till I went to university. This is who I am. I walk the streets. I still sit at Antimoni Wache every weekend to eat wache with boys and chat. I drive by myself most of the time, like I drove here. I don't have a bodyguard, nothing. I don't use police guard.
Aren't you scared?
Where I was living.
Aren't you scared to driving alone?
No, I'm not scared. Because like I said, I'm not afraid of those that can kill the body. I'm only afraid of those that can kill the soul. And I'm not sure that there are human beings capable of killing the soul.
What would you tell the millions of Ghanaians who, you know, think that, yes, the government is stabilizing, but it's not reflecting? So are we going to get to the promised land? Do we have promises? That's what you get from the MPP government, promises upon promises. So what is it? Are we going to get to the promised land after 4 years?
We are going to come back to the people, whether we like it or not, in 2020 to account for our stewardship. And so with that alone in mind, we are determined to come back to 2020 or to come in 2020 with a record that is very impressive. And so that alone should get people assured that we are not sleeping at all about the matter of transforming people's lives.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Mustapha Abdul Hamid. Yes, Doc Mustapha Abdul Hamid has been my guest. He's the Minister for Information. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. And if you have any questions for him, you can send it to our social media page on your screen right now. We'll forward it to him and get a reply for you. You've been watching The Hard Truth, and we are proudly brought to you by Murphy Homes, Dawa Industrial City, and Paul's Fitness Gym. And my name is Nana Akosia Kunedu Asante Samuels. Catch a repeat of the program tomorrow morning, 9 to 10 a.m. Thank you so much for watching. Good night. Bye.